We are abundant by nature. Our nature is nature. We are no separate from the trees, from this planet Earth. We are a part of nature. However, if the default of nature is abundance and we are nature, our default is abundance. So the only thing that's stopping ourselves from aligning with the abundance that's actually already here is the limitations we set between us and it. Welcome to the Deja Blu Podcast, where we believe that living a life of magic can be the default. Join us each week as we playfully and authentically dive into the mysteries of life and explore what it truly means to be human. From spirituality, wellness, and all things taboo, we don't hold anything back. So without further ado, let's let the magic unfold. Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome back to another episode of the Deja Blu Podcast. Today, again, is another solo episode. The people have spoken. I have asked what it is that you're looking for a little bit more in the Deja Blu Podcast. And those that have been with me on this journey from the beginning, yes, episode 1, which feels like a lifetime ago, many different iterations of me. I started predominantly just doing solo episodes, and it was more so just an opportunity for me to share my heart with you in a really unscripted, raw, vulnerable way. And then as the podcast has evolved and grown and the audience has continued to expand across the world, the podcast has taken on many different shapes and sizes. And one of those being that I have brought in those minds that have impacted me and empowered me along the way, those stories, the brilliance of individuals that have entered into my life and changed the direction of my life into a deeper level of authenticity within my own being. And so I have brought them on the podcast and become the interviewer. And I haven't really shared a lot about my own personal experience, but more so just learning and listening and then asking the necessary questions to be able to mine for gold that lives inside of these beings. And as beautiful and illuminating as that has been and will continue to do so, I do want to continue to weave in these solo episodes as well as an opportunity for you to feel my heart wherever you are, sitting at home or whatever it is that you're doing. If you're just listening to me in your ears, an opportunity for it kind of like hang out with Bluebee moment, which feels really good and really nourishing for me. So today, I'm just going to share with you a little bit about what is going on, what is present, and how today is a really monumental day for me and the history of the Deja Blu podcast, because today is the very last day of filming with Meraki Media. And Meraki Media are the production company behind the scenes that have supported me in creating this really professional lens, moving from the podcast of just like a microphone and just me sitting in my garage in the backyard with GarageBand and editing everything and doing everything myself, from the graphics to the intro and the outro and everything. I then got Meraki Media and onboarded them and brought them in and wove them into the space. And Meraki Media is a production company that is run by Andre Ducum, who is my past lover, as well as one of my best friends. And he has been supporting me to put the right frame around this existing artwork of what the Deja Blu podcast is. And the team, whether it's Chelsea and Matrix and everybody that has been working behind the scenes, like so diligently to support the podcast thriving and what it is today. And with that being said, it is now time for the Deja Blu podcast to grow its own sovereign wings and go out into the world and spread its magic far and wide while I onboard my own team. It's basically the Fluorescence production company that is being formed, which is all of my sisters and also all happen to be graduates of the Fluorescence program, which is mine and Reggie Riverbear's mystery school for women. And the women that have gone through this program and also just become dear sisters of mine are now all the ones that are manning things behind the scenes, womanning things behind the scenes, from the production to the camera, to the timestamps, to the filming, to the editing, to the creative direction and everything in between, which is a lot of work goes into podcasting. I had no idea when I started, and someone said to me, you know that most podcasters don't get past episode 7. Like they're like, oh, I want to create a podcast and this is really exciting. And then they get into it and then they realize how much work it actually takes. And not just work, but if you want to create a professional frame around you and you want to have a team, it is costly. Like I had no idea what it was going to come out to for me to be able to create and create free content every week. It's a lot of work. And also when the passion is there and I've healing my relationship with consistency, the reward and the value of what can be created and how far it can spread. It's miraculous how far the podcast has spread up until this point. So with that all being said, I am so grateful, and I'm also learning so much. And I've allowed the podcast to be my muse that is allowing me to move from the archetype of the maiden into the mother, and to really actually start nourishing the soul that's beneath my feet. And so that's really going to be the segue into today's episode of what is most alive and what does it actually mean to be one's own mother. Because I think for the majority of our lives, specifically when we're children, we look to our mother, we look to our father to get a sense of if we're doing right or wrong, if we're doing good or bad. And what I mean by that is for the first 3 or 4 years of our lives, we didn't know, based off of our own internal system, whether what we were doing was okay or wasn't okay. We would know it through the eyes of our mother. For example, if I pick up something and I start like banging around with it as a baby does, mum looks over to me and goes, no, put it down. I'm like, oh, okay, that was bad. And so in my mind, it splits into this binary experience that there's a right and wrong way of doing things. And I would know through the validation or the punishment of my mother. And so what happened is it creates this experience of, well, I know myself through the eyes of another. And that's all fair and well, because our mothers also, like, for the most part, I can only speak on behalf of my own experience, but she kept me alive, you know? If I didn't have my mama or like my papa that was like helping me as a baby, I wouldn't stay alive. I don't know how to feed myself. I don't know how to go to the grocery store. I mean, literally, I cannot. I'm a baby, right? I can't do any of these things. And also, there has to be some sort of like evolution or maturation or recalibration of that relationship where that shifts to going, I am my own mother. My mother doesn't live with me anymore. And I currently now, live out on my own, and I have done for a very long time. And yet that intertwined relationship for that external validation, this is the maiden archetype. It's like doing things for external validation, doing things because somebody else says that I'm doing well, or I got validated through social media, or I got validated through my partner, or I got validated through my friends, or I got validated through the amount of money that I have in my bank account. However, I've also learned that that's very fleeting, because if happiness lies anywhere outside based off of some external validation, then I am going to have an issue with keeping some sort of balanced mental happiness. Because it's all subject to change. The only thing is constant is change and the outside. And so the shift from the maiden archetype into the mother archetype is actually going on that journey of allowing the validation to come from within. Now that is a journey in itself. And so a little bit of context of where does that validation from the outside in even come from? Secondly, the validation that is starting to come from within is a journey in itself. And this is really what I'm putting emphasis on today, is that the podcast grew way faster than I was ever anticipating. First and foremost, I didn't create the podcast for you. I mean this in the best way possible. I created the podcast to have an outlet for everything that was moving through me. And to, even if it was just one person that listened to it, even if it was no one that listened to it, at least I had somewhere for all my thoughts and all of my journeys and all of my insights and all of what it is that I've integrated through the ceremony of life to actually have an outlet. And so now that actually we've got to this point now where I got my numbers back the other day, I think we have 4 million listeners. 4 million. Oh, how did that happen in 2.5 years? 4 million. I haven't spent a single dollar on advertising. That is all you. That is you sharing on your Instagram stories. That is you sharing and being like, hey, mate, I think that there's something here that could be really supportive for you. I'm going to share it with you. That is all you. I didn't anticipate this. This was not my why. My why was it was medicine for me. And I think that that's also a significant piece here, is that it became medicine for my being. And therefore, as a byproduct, it started to ripple out. And so what I've learned is people really love authenticity. People really love the peeling back the layers of one's own becoming journey and then vulnerably sharing that so that we can find our own unique resonance within it and allow that medicine to be applied to our own unique experience. So as the podcast continued to grow, the part of myself that still wasn't mothering myself was not necessarily growing with it because it was not addressed. And so what was happening was it was like easy to start living for what Reverend Brianna Lynn would call the champagne moments. And the champagne moments is the next high and the next achievement and the next exciting thing and the next opportunity and the next conversation and the next and the next. And it's fun to chase those. This is also very maiden archetype energy, is chasing the next high as opposed to nourishing the soil that's beneath our feet. And what I've actually realized right now, 'tis the season, summer solstice, coming in hot, is that the theme that I'm feeling not only within myself, but within a lot of the conversations I'm having with the people around me, is that when I unpacked my house into this new home, I realized that I have boxes that have followed me for the past, God knows how long, at least the past 3 homes I've lived in. That are the boxes of the nicks and knacks. I don't know what to do with them. It's the random things. It's the gifts that I got from my grandma with the earrings, but they're broken, but I don't want to throw them away because they're my grandma's. But I also don't have a drawer for them. And so they just sit in this box and accumulate this energy. And it goes from house to house to house to house. And I've been in this house now for just under a month. And these boxes are just sitting by my door. And I realized that for so long in my life, there has been that final 10% that I just don't do. And it doesn't just apply to the boxes. The boxes are super symbolic. The final 10% was when I'm doing a painting. And I literally have a painting right now. It's sitting over there. There's 10% that still needs to be done. And I've just left it. I get to 90%. It's just enough for me to be okay with it. And I let go of the 10% because I don't love to do the final 10%. And Andre once said to me, what would it look like, Blue, if you do everything that you love with 100%, what would it look like to apply 200% to the things that you don't love to do? And it's easier said than done because there's so much resistance that comes up. There's so much distraction. I have double distraction in my gene keys. It's also double intoxication. But it's double distraction. And hell, if I'm going to sit there and, for example, Lily is sitting next to me, not the dog, the human, is sitting next to me. I have to specify that, by the way, because I've been hanging out with Lily, the human, a lot recently, and people think that I'm just really deepening my relationship with my dog. And I'm like, oh, I went out for dinner with Lily the other day. And they're like, wow, that's really sweet. And then I'm like, yeah, and then we sat in ceremony with Lily the other day. And like, you sat in ceremony with your dog? Anyways, that's a side subject. Not to go off on a tangent. We're talking about distraction, right on time. Here it is, distraction in real time. So, that final 10%, it's easier for me to scroll on Instagram, run a bath, go eat some food in the fridge, go outside and flail my arms in front of the sun, whatever it is that I can do, than to face that final 10%. However, what I am realizing is we are abundant by nature. Our nature is nature. We are no separate from the trees, from this planet Earth. We are a part of nature. However, if nature is if the default of nature is abundance, and we are nature, our default is abundance. So the only thing that's stopping ourselves from aligning with the abundance that's actually already here is the limitations we set between us and it. And that limitation for me is, how can I take the podcast to the next level and the next evolution when there is 10% of the entirety of my life, from my body health and my gut health to my finances and my accounting to unpacking my room to finishing and closing out all of the random subscriptions that I don't use, to tying up loose ends with any relationships or any text messages that I have left by the waistline, and it's just sort of leaving energy to kind of unresolved energy that's kind of like leaving a tab open. And how on earth can I receive the abundance that's my natural default if the containers have holes in them? Like, if you want to pour water into a cup and at the bottom of the cup it's got a hole in it, and you're going, I'm ready for you, universe. I'm ready for the next wave of abundance. And that cup has a hole in it. Then the universe can pour in, but it's going to seep out through that hole. And so what it means for me and to move out of this maiden archetype and into the mother archetype is to recognize, where in my life have I left that 10%? And that is feeding agitation because it's directly connected to one of the core wounds or the core fears of humanity that I have noticed, which is the fear of wasting our own potential in this lifetime. that hole is directly linked with the fear of wasting our own potential. Now, of course, if we're not addressing it, but we're sitting here with a fear, we're just going to be agitated. We're going to be agitated ourselves, and therefore agitation within ourselves is also agitation within anybody else in our psychic field or our mental awareness that is succeeding in life. I'm going to be annoyed when someone else succeeds because I know I'm sitting on my own potential and distracting myself away from that 10%. So how can we use that trigger we feel from other people that are crushing their lives as an amazing teacher and invitation, specifically as the summer solstice right now, to use the solar force and that solar power energy to do the things that we don't like with 200%? So I want to bring this question into you because I'm sharing it from a really this is my reality right now. This isn't something that I have mastered. This is not a workshop in how to take care of the final 10%. This is a sister sitting in front of you, telling you and sharing with you the vulnerability of my own personal experience when I do a check-in of where in my life am I letting go of the archetype of the maiden and into the mother archetype of nourishing and nurturing that final 10% in all different areas of my life. And what does that actually look like? And one of the main things that is really helping me right now is sisterhood and accountability. It's literally everything. Because I can tell you right now that when I wake up and I set my alarm in the morning, the night before, to wake up at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning to go and do a workout, if I haven't got anyone holding me accountable, and the next morning when my alarm goes off, probably not actually going to do it, because I'm going to wake up in the morning and I was like, who the heck was I when I set my alarm? That was a different bitch. Who I am right now is a completely different human. I don't want to wake up. But I know that when my sister is downstairs and she's waiting for me and she's ready to go and she's ready to crush that workout, I'm not going to let her down. For some reason, there's something inside of me that will let myself down happily. I can totally not honor my commitments to myself till queendoms come. But when it comes to actually holding myself accountable with other people that are also sharing a very similar goal or vision, that they also want to create sacred structure, and they're holding each of us accountable that we said that what we're going to do, and recognizing that our word is actually everything, I'm going to get up, I'm going to move through the resistance, I'm going to find the expansion on the other side, and that's doing the things that I don't love to do with 200%. Another teaching that I am currently the student of is boundaries. And what does that actually mean? Boundaries with myself and boundaries with the world outside of myself. And somebody shared with me a meme. I think it was Reggie Riverbear, of course. And it was a woman lounging, and she was just sort of laying there. And this other woman comes over to her and she's like, wow, you are so radiant. How do you do it? And she just looked back at her and she's like, boundaries, darling. And honestly, I'm learning a deeper level of what boundaries mean from a maiden archetype and what boundaries mean from a mother archetype. And the maiden, again, and also when I speak of maiden, my south node is also in Leo. So if you know anything to do with astrology, the thing I'm moving away from, my challenge or my shadow, is the need for validation. In relationships, through social media, through the comments in YouTube. There's a shadow in that for me that feels like, okay, well, if I get that validation from outside of myself, then I'm doing a good job. And it's really my deepest teaching is to validate myself within. And realizing that also, even if you don't have a south node in Leo, it doesn't really matter. It's also the shadow nature of the archetype of the maiden, and also just being young and navigating the world at large, specifically because we are the first generation that's had social media in the way that we do, and with Instagram stories and posting and likes and validation in that sense, and those dopamine hits that we get when we see someone liked or someone commented on it. We're literally at war with spiritual psychology / our attention and our awareness. Big companies are trying to get our attention at all times. And so our attention, as Andre Dukem would say, our attention is our greatest spiritual currency that exists. Because if our attention is focused, then we're going to be way more productive than if our attention is spread thinly. And so I'm realizing that the maiden or the people pleaser energy will say yes to things because because somebody asked and I think it would be nice for them, it's their birthday or it's their this, or, there's a million reasons as to why we say yes to the things outside of ourselves. However, what I'm really learning is that right now, for me personally, I am in this phase right now where I'm single. I don't have children. I am in full mission focus growth mode from the foundations up, with very deep, sturdy roots of a sustainability of what I want to create. And that also comes with some sort of sacrifice. And what I mean by the sacrifice is that I don't have or the will, desire, or time to want to meet up with everybody for coffee or for tea. I can't think of anything more irritating to my system when I am in focus go mode in the summer solstice and the solar plexus is on fire and I'm mission driven than sitting on my floor or anywhere talking about other people. It's like, it drives me nuts. I want to get up from the conversation and run off in a different direction because for me, it doesn't feel progressive. And so there is a gentleness and there is a softness and there is an articulation around setting those boundaries. However, in the past, because I didn't want to upset the person, I kind of became avoidant. And so when someone would send me a message like, hey, do you want to get tea? I would just not respond. And that's really not helpful either, because then it leads to a clearing conversation, because then somebody thinks that I'm mad at them. And I'm not mad at them at all. I just didn't want to upset them by saying no to what they asked. And then because I didn't respond, then it created room for assumption. And that room for assumption that then had led to another clearing conversation. And it just became sort of like, wait, what is the piece here that I am constantly recycling this very unclear boundaries? And it was about that I wasn't super clear on what it is that I was creating anyway. And it was more so for validation of like, okay, I'm just creating content and here's the thing and I'm just producing. But it was about coming back to my why, giving myself the full permission that 'tis the season to build my business. 'Tis the season to build my creation. This is the season to build everything from the foundation up with solid foundations where there's no holes in it, so that the energetics from the universe can pour in and there's nothing that's being leaked. And on that sense of clarity, the clarity of my boundaries of right now, my focus is on 6 people that sit around my table, which I would say that's my core inner tribe. And I will nourish those connections. But anybody outside of those connections, I just get to be super loving and super clear in my boundaries to align my energy with my focus and my mission, so that it's not this leaky, uncertain room for assumption of what is actually going on, because there's a deep desire just to be validated for my existence, when that validation can actually come from the inside out. And this is the Mother Archetype. And also essentially the essence of the crone, who knows who she is. She knows where she's going. She knows what her why is before she's running. She's taking the time to marry the masculine principle with the feminine principle, being the sacred structure. And then within the sacred structure, that feminine energy of the listening and the creativity and being that which is needed, and finding that sweet spot and recognizing through clear communication and the articulation of that nourishes to that depletes. For example, that nourishes is working with my sisters in a shared focus and spending our day building out structures and sharing in those places where we're actually moving forward in momentum. And recognizing that depletes is those moments where I'm just sitting talking about other people and their lives and what it is that they're doing. That it does not excite me during this stage in my life, nor I don't think will it ever excite me. I'm a Scorpio to the 10th degree. And I just want to go in death and rebirth and full recalibration and be deeply mission driven when it comes to actually moving humanity into a direction of genuine unity. And so boundaries is something that actually does create vitality, and it does create life force energy, and it does create focused attention and intention. And what Reverend Brianna Lynn would say is our attention plus intention together equals magic. And so when we can call our intention back and recognize that a part of my attention was being drained by that 10% of unpacked boxes that have followed with me for so many different house moves, and they're sitting there, and every time I walk past it is reinforcing that distraction energy within myself, so that my distraction away from taking care of my taxes, my distraction away from taking care of crossing my T's and dotting my I's, and realizing the importance of this if I truly want to create the pristine frequency of what a true queen essence means to me. Because a queen is how we do anything, is how we do everything. And I am now setting myself up for the next 6 weeks as sacred structure. So what that looks like to me is that I'm taking a pause from producing the podcast. I'm taking a pause from allowing myself to be in the constant for years now creation mode and coming back to the basics. And I had a conversation with Richard Rudd 2 days ago, and he talked about the energy of the animal spirit of the rhino. And he said that the rhino is the archetypal energy that the Gene Keys is applying now, because he too is also bringing it back to sacred structure and basics. And what he told me about the energy of the rhino was gentle persistence. And I really loved the power of gentle persistence, because it takes the rush off of it. This is not a season. This is a life's work. When I am committed to something to the core of your being with a mission that will continue to mold and change, but the essence stays the same, it requires gentle persistence. Not this constant rush, and then burn out, and then rush, and then burn out. But realizing that there's no rush when it comes to a life's work. And so that gentle persistence over time, that consistency is the thing that builds what it is that we want to create. And so that is the essence that I am evoking within this next 6 weeks, is the gentle persistence within everything that I'm creating, so that I'm allowing myself to recognize how I do anything is how I do everything. And that every area of my life, whether it is the cleanliness of my bedroom, whether it is how I've made my bed, whether it is how I'm eating or what food I'm putting in my body, to my movement practices, to my quarterly reports with my accountant, is gentle persistence. And that is what I believe it means to mother yourself. That's what I believe it means to have that beautiful balance of the masculine and the feminine principles within our own being. The gentleness is the feminine, the persistence is the masculine. And that is a beautiful meeting right in the middle, where two worlds collide, and where I can actually lay in bed at night and go, I love who I am. Not because I have a partner telling me they love me, not because I have people on Instagram telling me that they love me, not because I have friends that are telling me that they love me, because I am telling me that I love me. And I'm letting the world respond to that narrative. And that's what it actually means to become the great mother and the great father of my own experience, from my perspective. At the end of the day, when we take our last breath from this life, it's not going to be what it is that we achieved. It's not going to be the money that we made. It's not going to be how big the house was. It's not going to be how flashy the car was that we drove. The one thing that every single person that I've witnessed in my life that has passed away, the one thing that remains is people talk about how they felt around that person. People talk around what impact that they made with their life. People talk about what they loved about them. And the thing that some people regret is that I wish I'd spent more time with that person. And so, as much as finding that beautiful balance between that masculine and feminine, that gentleness and that persistence, that go and the flow, the listening, and to be that which is needed. And sometimes that which is needed is to rest for a few days. And sometimes that which is needed is just to unpack that final 10%. Realizing that actually, I'm not going to say, I don't believe that I'm happy that I spent my entire life working. I feel like what I will say is that I'm glad I spent as much time as I could with my father, with my mother, with my family. And something that I've noticed also is that I get so caught up in the creation and the doing that I have sometimes overlooked the preciousness of life, because my entire life, all I've known is that my parents have been alive. So there's some sort of like belief that there's an immortality, that it will just always be there. And that's not the case. Life is extremely precious and things can be gone like that. And so while finding that inner riches and building a world that feels really nourishing and really supportive for myself, what I've also realized is that if this is a life's work, not a season, I can give myself the gift of taking some time off and going, sitting and listening to the stories of my parents. And so I just booked 2 weeks to fly back to the UK. I have specifically designed it so that I get 1 week with my mother and 1 week with my father, and just having one-on-one intentional time while I take a pause with the podcast and production, and recognizing that I'm building the foundation and the infrastructure to create a sustainability as a life's work, not a season, and realizing what's most important amidst the ecstasy and the joy of building one's own heart's dreams and desires into the manifest world. So I'm really excited for these next 6 weeks. I have my sisters by my side. We're all building out the structure. We are going all in 200% to the things that we keep putting off within our own personal lives, and also collectively within the shared vision and goal with the Deja Blu podcast and with Fluorescence and everything else that we are all co-creating together. And the reason why I'm sharing, or my intention as to why I'm sharing all of this with you today, is to continue to infuse that personal flavor back into the Deja Blu podcast, so you can get a little bit of a feeling for what's happening for me behind the scenes, while at the same time I have a little bit of context as to why I'm taking a break just for a short while, just for 6 weeks. It's not a big one, but also realizing that I'm going to be coming back in with a little bit more sustainability from deeper roots. And may you find your own unique piece within this. Where is that 10% that lies within your life? And how can you apply 200% to the things that you actually are avoiding to support with actual freedom on the other side? And realizing actually sometimes structure, in fact, always structure, can equal freedom. And so being in discipline is to be a disciple of your dreams and your visions and your goals. And so to be a disciplined person is to be a disciple of that which you've always deemed that you know you're capable of in this lifetime. So that is my prayer for you. That is my wish for you. And if you found some inspiration from this, then please go ahead and share it on your stories and on your platform if you feel like it could inspire and support other beings to really be able to live the fullness of their life and to align themselves with what truly matters. I'm sending you so much love and a big, big warm and hug and kiss from myself and the 2 baby doggies here and my whole crew here in the studio. From my heart to yours, may you be inspired, uplifted, illuminated, and expanded on the other side of this podcast. And I look forward to reconnecting with you on the other side of my 6-week hiatus. Blessings.